This production is sponsored by S&J Detailing, the patio and driveway cleaning experts. Quote Super League Raw on quotation for an exclusive discount. S&J Detailing and Super League Raw, washing away the competition. So welcome again to another In Conversation, and we are in the presence of Super League royalty for this one. I am delighted to have Tony Smith with us. Tony, welcome to Super League Raw.
Thanks, David. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, our pleasure too. So what we do, to begin with, we'll settle Tony in just to get him comfortable, as always. Tony, who's your favourite band?
Oh, toughie. Blink-182 or Green Day, but probably Blink, just by a smidgen.
Like a bit of that in the changing rooms. Do you try and coach the boys to playing proper music in the changing rooms?
No, it's changed over the years. I had to put up with whatever they wanted and what inspired them. But occasionally, we actually at Warrington Wolves, we used to do this thing where a different person each week would come up with their playlist to play in the gym, and also that would carry through to game day pre-game. So it was name drawn out of the hat, and I had my turn. I think I turned the players off that week. I'm not sure we won that week, but anyway, I had a good time.
Happy days. Your favourite film of all time?
Forrest Gump, probably. I like the messages in it. Bit of a softie, me, and Forrest Gump probably be my go-to.
Fair play. If there was a film made of Tony Smith's life, who would you want playing the lead role?
Oh, some clown. I don't know. Somebody who's out there a bit.
Jim Carrey. That'd be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I'd like him. Yeah. I don't know. No, I'm not good on those things. And I doubt it'd be a very interesting film if it was made.
Oh, I don't know about that. What 3 words best describe Tony Smith?
Wow. I like to be inspiring if I can. I try to inspire people. I'm probably not inspiring them with my answer there, but I'll try to inspire people to be their best. I'd like to think humble. That's a big part of probably caring. I care about the people around me and the people I work with, and I hope that comes across. And the messages that I can send to people, I hope they're good ones.
Fantastic. Indian or Chinese?
Ooh, Indian, definitely.
Nice. What's your current TV box set? What are you watching on the box?
I haven't got it. There's a show that's been recommended to me. I've only watched one of it. SAS.
Yeah.
SAS something. I've only seen the first episode. It was great. But my favourite all-time box set is Breaking Bad. I just love it. I could go to that anytime.
Fair play. Right. Who has influenced you the most in the game of rugby league? Who's influenced you the most?
Oh, wow. I've had so many. But probably Brian Smith, my older brother. I played underneath him for a few years, but coached with him. But he's probably the biggest one. And then a guy that works for him, a guy called Max Ninnis. Nobody will know his name except maybe a few people in Australia. He coached at St. George for many years, but he was one of Brian's assistants. And he had a very big impact on me, both as a player, and then I had a brief stint with him coaching. And Max is no longer with us. He passed away a few years ago from MND, but some of the gems that he left me with, I'll always be grateful for. So he had a big impact. But, Brian Smith would probably be the person that has probably had the most influence.
Let's go off on a tangent. Give us a gem. What was one of the gems?
Both in a good way, Brian Smith, and how and taught me a few of how not to do things as well. So I'm very grateful for that. Yeah.
Give us one of the gems. You said that you were left with a gem or two. What was one of those gems?
He had a few things that are lasting with me. The old saying, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Well, Max went, I don't like it. He said he was an ex-school teacher before he became a full-time coach. And he went, that's sort of degrading of the people that you're working with. That's insinuating that they're not very smart. And he says, I like MISS. Make it seem simple or make it sound simple. And he used to say, rugby league's not simple, it's complex. There's no other more complex sport that I can think of that's more multi-skilled than rugby league. But to break it down, to make it seem simple, that's the key to it. And that's something that stuck with me. And the other one that Max really got me as well was, I'm going to give you two more.
Yeah, go for it.
Max used to say, coach the skill, not the drill. So for us coaches, we go out there sometimes, and if the drill goes all smoothly and there's no mistakes and we think it's a great drill, but sometimes we forget what the actual skill is that we're trying to achieve. And sometimes you can make a skill so it's challenging for the skill to be learnt rather than just being able to flow through it. So that stuck with me. The other one that Max used to do with me, when I'd go to him and ask him how I'd played, he'd always come back to me with, how do you think you played? And he had a knack of asking questions that led me to my own answers. It made me have to think about my own game. It made me take responsibility and be thoughtful about my own game. And some of those things have stuck with me throughout my career that I've applied, and they've been good for me. Everybody's got to find their own ways, and they can't copy everybody else. But you can take things that are appropriate to you and apply it to the people around you. So I'm very, very grateful for some of those gems of that. Max, but also plenty that Brian Smith instilled on me. But every coach, and even some of the coaches that weren't so good for me, I learnt so many lessons from them. Sometimes how not to do things, and they're very valuable lessons that I've applied as well. So I'm grateful to all my good and bad coaches.
Do you know what though? What's wonderful about that, and like you, I'm a bit of a softie. I love legacy, and what you've talked about there is the legacy of human beings. And even though some of them have passed, through you they live on, and I'm sure that you've instilled those qualities in people that you've touched. So I'm a great believer in that. That it's not what we leave behind is what we instill in others. That's what lives on. And clearly you've had some great influences in your career, and I'm sure you've played the same role for other people as well. Wonderful stuff. Who's the funniest person you've ever met in rugby league?
Oh wow. I've met a number of them. I don't know. It's so many characters that you come across throughout your career. On the spot it's a bit difficult to answer, but there's some crazy people that make you laugh and make you smile, and I love those sort of characters. I love having them in your team, characters that sometimes are a little bit out there and a little bit zany. They're good for a team. I like to be that person sometimes too, and that's an aspect of my personality that often people out there don't see until you work with me. Sometimes I'm I'll have to tell myself, stop trying to be funny, and make people laugh, because I think it's a big part of the working environment. I like having people who are characters and like that they can shine. And I'm going to say, characters like, and Lee Breers was one of those that I coached. He'd make people smile and make people laugh. Rob Burrow used to do it at Leeds Rhinos. I know there's been lots of talk about Rob over the last number of years for plenty of good reasons, but he was one of those people who make people smile and just break the mood sometimes, and in a good way. And I think it's sometimes you can have the most serious of conversations, and somebody can just break the mood for a good reason, and I love that. And I love when we're in environments like that where we can laugh at ourselves, and I like when, Benny Harrison and Simon Grex used to be characters in our team when I was there at Warrington Wolves, and, pull little pranks on me that we still laugh about, years later, and, drawing very silly, immature little boy things on the side of my car that I didn't know that was on the side of my car, and I'm driving around and people are laughing at me. Excuse my dog here. Somebody could be breaking in here, David. Sorry.
It's all right. It's not a problem. So, in terms of going back, worst dressed.
Well, I honestly, I'm an Aussie that doesn't care too much. My wife has to tell me what colours to wear and not to wear together. So I'd probably be right up there in my top 10 at least, or maybe even top 5. So, because of that, I'm not real critical of anybody else's fashion or attire. As long as it's respectable, I don't care for myself. So, I'm not going to judge others.
Fair enough. Right. What was your favourite ground to coach? And I say as an away coach. As an away coach, what was your favourite ground to go to and why?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, Wembley. Old
Yeah.
Trafford. Old Trafford. Pardon me. I don't know. Some grounds just have that atmosphere, don't they? And I think Headingley had that. Whether I was home coach or whether I was an away coach, I always enjoyed going there on a Friday evening because of the atmosphere and just the vibe about it. But grounds in England, in some of those old grounds, they were difficult to watch from, but they were great atmosphere. You'd have pylons in front of you sometimes. I think Cass still do. Where you got to duck around to see the action, but it's the noise that's the difference. It's the atmosphere that probably different to where I've was raised. But I always used to like playing at Sydney Football Stadium as well, on those few occasions that it was around during my career.
Fantastic stuff. Right. This is a good one. Who is the best player that you've ever seen play the great game of rugby league?
Oh, wow. Tough. Yeah, tough. A couple of my idols when I was growing up, I was a halfback when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I used to love watching Terry Lamb, a guy called Terry Lamb. For those, many of you won't remember him, but I used to look up to him. And a guy called Tommy Rudonikas was another halfback, and I admired those as players. But oh wow, there's so many, great players that I've watched over the years. But I'm going to say there's one player, an English player that is right up there, and that's current Warrington Wolves coach. I think he's one of the most complete rugby league players I've I've had the pleasure of watching. I've had the pleasure of coaching briefly as well. But yeah, he's right up there, Sam. But yeah, there's been plenty over the years, and Wally Lewis was another great one that I admired, and I had the pleasure of playing him once. He was a bit condescending to me. I tackled him once, and he gave me a pat on the head. I hated it, but it was probably appropriate because I was never, going to be in his category. But and I did all right that day. It was one of my better days. But yeah, listen, there's so many that I watch and love and admire, and what the skillful players and creative players, and just fantastic.
Fantastic stuff. Right, last one of these, and then we'll get
Sure.
into you. You've got 3 dinner party guests to invite to Chateau Smith. Who would you invite and why? Alive or dead? 3 people that can come and have a meal with you, alive or dead. Who would you invite and why?
Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
Bill Walsh, the American football coach. I did have the pleasure of meeting and having lunch with one day. And I'm going to say somebody else who I've just recently discovered that I really admire. A guy, he's an exceptional entrepreneur in America, Gary Vaynerchuk is his name. Gary V. If anybody out there wants to look him up, look up Gary V. And he's got YouTubes, and he's on every bit of social media. Not that I am, but I've discovered him, and he's very inspirational in terms of he's very authentic. Tells things as they are, as he sees them. He tries to help people, but he doesn't spend a lot of time worrying about if they don't like what he says. He speaks his mind, and he tries to help people, but if that's not for them, he's fine with that. Yeah, and I've taken a lot of inspiration from that, because sometimes we can all get caught up in trying to be liked too much and trying to please everybody. And as long as you please those around you and those, immediate to you, and you're true to yourself, I think they are the important things. You're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And, and sometimes you worry too much about what other people think. So he's a good one. But all 3 of those guys are, I find, inspirational. That, and Winston Churchill, I'd love to meet him because he was able to inspire people when things were bad, like really bad. And I think that's a real test of leadership and character. When it's all good when it's good, it's easy. It's all easy when it's good. It's when the proverbial hits the fan, that's when you find out about, true leaders and whether they can inspire people around them.
Couldn't agree more. Wonderful stuff. Right, let's get into you. So for the younger people watching, we're not going to go there, but Tony did play rugby league back in the day over there in Australia. Halfback, predominantly, Tony.
Yeah,
and then
mainly.
he had, believe it or not, younger people out there, he had a sabbatical in the good old UK. He went to Workington.
First year of Super League. First year it was.
Yeah. On the topic of Workington, because obviously you played in Cumbria. Cumbrian Rugby League, such a hotbed of rugby league. It is a travesty that we haven't ever managed to get a team there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Listen, it was 1996 when I played there, so it is, coming up to a long time ago, which shows my age. And I'm not going to do the math on it. However, having lived there and understanding the rivalry between the towns, I also see the difficulty in them uniting. Well, that's how it was back then. That if you had thrown a whole lot of money at Workington and Whitehaven and said, get together and let's form a team, they would have said, no way. No way. No matter how much money you throw at me, I'm not going to do it. That's kind of the vibe. I don't know if that's still the case. There's so many good young players up in that region. They're tough kids. They're hard kids. They play tough rugby league and good rugby league. But to get them to unite, I'm not sure.
But on that, Tony, I mean, because we've spoke about this on our show quite a lot, and I know we haven't got the finances at the moment. Hopefully, that changes in the future. The NRL are rumoured to be potentially looking at Super League from an investment perspective. But like in the NFL, there is a club name, and they've moved around, haven't they? I mean, for example, the LA. I don't watch NFL, but I think the LA Raiders are now lost at Vegas. I don't know.
Vegas.
They move them around. It would be wonderful if we ever got to a point where we could just actually create a new Cumbrian team that the likes of Workington, Whitehaven could feed into, so the youth of those clubs and their structures could feed into it, which would unite, because all of a sudden, you've got this big Super League Cumbrian side, but you retain the traditional Heartlands teams as well, like what we see all around the sport. It'd be wonderful if we got to a day like that where it would be a brand new franchise for Cumbria, because I think that would be very, very well supported if we could do that.
I'm hearing you, David. I'm not sure. I'm not, we're talking different cultures here and different what people are used to. And I don't know. And I don't know whether Cumbria's got the appetite for that. I'm not sure. Your question is, wouldn't it be good? Yes, it would. Is it practical and could it happen? Maybe I'd need some convincing, or they'd have to convince me that that's what they wanted, because the culture's so different here and it's so tribal with their home teams. And I don't know that people would support a new team and their old team. I'm not sure, and I'm not sure that they've got the population to do that and sustain it as well. And unless somebody's just prepared to keep throwing money into it from afar, I'm not sure. All those things, logistics would have to be looked at.
They would. Welcome to Super League Raw. Let's dream big. Outstanding stuff. Right. Let's get into your coaching career. Japan. How did that come about?
Yeah. Well, it did and it didn't. I was going to be the national coach of the Japanese team, coming into the Emerging Nations World Cup. A friend of mine had been involved from Australia, had been involved with Japan, and asked me I was assistant coach at Parramatta at the time, and asked me would I take on the role as head coach for Japan. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. So we're just in the midst of me about to go to Tokyo and start to, and I've never been to Japan since, unfortunately, because I was so excited about going. And I was about to organise the trip to go there and start with the team and for the World Cup in the Emerging Nations sector that was going to be held in England. And then the job came up for Huddersfield Giants, and I applied for it. And I was going through the process of applying for it over the phone and doing psychometric tests and mock applications of the salary cap. They asked me, with the salary cap, what would I spend it on? And they were very, very in depth in their recruitment. But all in those days, no Zooms, so it was all over the telephone. And I felt like I was disadvantaged at that stage, so made the offer to the Giants that I'd catch a plane over on Monday and do the interview on Tuesday, and if I didn't get the job, I'd fly back on Wednesday and take up my position as assistant coach at Parramatta again. And flew over and interviewed, and Tuesday evening got the job and rang my wife and asked her to pack up the house and 2 children under 3 and make your way over because I'm starting work tomorrow. And which went down really well, as you can imagine. She's almost forgiven me now. But so I didn't end up actually doing the Japanese job because I got the Huddersfield Giants job. However, when they came over, the Japanese team, I linked up with them and gave them some support. I went to each of their games, one of which was at Whitehaven. Really interesting characters. I travelled on the bus with them. They taught me some Japanese. I can't repeat what they taught me because they taught me all the Japanese swear words and thought it was very funny. But what I did do for them was they got me at each of their matches to read out the team sheet before the game. And my interpretation of Japanese and Japanese names, they were just in stitches before the game. They didn't fare very well either. So it wasn't.
No, they lost 54-0 to Bala.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, so it didn't work.
Happy days. I'm sure that had nothing to do with your input. Right, Huddersfield. You mentioned Huddersfield. And do you know what, Huddersfield? In terms of, and again, I want you to get into this as a coach. What a wonderful baptism of fire of head coaching, because of course the first season was torrid, absolutely torrid. I mean, at one point, don't want to remind you, but 17 losses on the spin, which again, from a character, from a internally self-belief, must have been challenging. Then, of course, you go down to the Championship year 2, smash it, absolutely smash it, and you come back up. And then in your final year, you make sure that they remain in Super League. So there's a big roller coaster there. So just walk us through your time at Huddersfield in terms of you as a coach, starting in your first head coach position, that roller coaster of year 1 to year 2 to year 3.
Well, I took over at the end of 2000, and I think that was 2 games officially that I was there, and they were both losses. And then I think it was, David, I think it was 13 straight losses then. So that takes my tally to, as a rookie head coach, that took my tally to 15, I think it was. I could be corrected. I don't go back looking at it too often. My stats at any point of my career. But I think it was up to 15. And then we had a draw as our first against the London Broncos as our first point on the board. And that was midway through the season. Second half of the season, and we actually did this thing. We scrapped the first part of the season and we did our own table for the second half of the season. So we were on 1 point in the second part of the season, game 1. And then we finished as a team. We had this drawer up, this ladder in our gym. We finished 6th for the second half of the season. We turned it around. Not enough because we still got relegated. And then went down to the next division and we went through undefeated. We had one draw. That was against Whitehaven. And Paul Cullen was the coach at Whitehaven. So we had an undefeated season. I can honestly say, hand on heart, my first year as a coach was right up there as, if not my most enjoyable, very close to it. And also some of my biggest learnings. And it taught me about leadership. It taught me how to lead. It taught me how to lead when things aren't going well, how to inspire people, how to remain positive. It reinforced what I thought coaching was about. And my job as a coach, I get judged by people outside all the time, but my job as a coach was to improve the team and improve individuals within the team and myself. That's my job. Now, other people judge me on whether we won or lost and all those sort of things. That's not how I judge myself right from day one, right to day end. If I'm able to get my players to improve and my team to improve, well, that's all what I get employed to do, and that's all I can do. Now, the byproduct of doing that, sometimes if the team's good enough, they win, or win regularly, or win more often. So, yeah, my focus has always been, and I'll say this, and I say it, I've always worked for my players. I worked for my players, and I worked for some of my employers too. Some of them were very, very good people, and I was doing my best for them as well. But I was the players were my, who I worked for.
It's quite interesting. We had Paul Rowley on as an in conversation guest,
I coached
and he
him.
said exactly what you said, that in his playing career, that year at Huddersfield Giants was perhaps his favourite ever season, which I think is a great testament, in adversity. When, because let's be fair, it's like you said, it's easy when the sun's shining, but to create an environment where, you're getting a bloody nose more often than not, but people are enjoying coming to work, they're enjoying the project. For you, that early in your coaching career, that's an amazing achievement, isn't it?
It is, and I can tell you that the next year was more challenging, and I didn't enjoy it near as much because we had a team that was too good for everybody else that season. At stages, we didn't play well, but we're still good enough to win. That's why it's not all about winning for me. It's not. There was complacency at times, probably from the coach as well. All those, some of those things that you don't like about, performing well. And I like teams to turn up and want to play every week and want to be their best, every week, but every day. And the contrast of those 2 years, it was great. I can remember Brian Smith saying to me afterwards, my brother, and saying to me, he said, "You're so lucky," he said, "to have those 2 seasons as your first 2 seasons as a head coach will stand you in good stead for the rest of your career." He was right. I didn't know how long that was going to be at that stage, but the messages and the learnings from those 2 contrasting years have stuck with me right throughout my career and have prepared me for, some of the things that were to come ahead of me.
Superb, absolutely superb. Like I say, really, it really intrigued me that when Paul said that when I did his in combo, because
Can I
again,
throw in there, David?
to the
I'll
outside
just
looking into any club, Tony, when a club is in adversity, you presume that within the 4 walls of that training session or the club, it's going to be turmoil. There's going to be, a lot of hard conversations, a lot of problems. So when he said, no, actually, when he just come out of it, no, it was great, brilliant, absolutely took me by surprise, but
loved it.
great stuff.
Can I tell you, just as a side issue, and I still get players from that first year that will ring me from time to time, and some of them out of the blue. I mightn't hear from them, some of them for 20 years, and they'll ring me up and just say, something you said to me back then it resonates with me now, or when we went through that period, I can understand how that was good now, and we actually had a great time. We had to create an atmosphere and a culture where we wanted to come to work and get better. We knew we had to get better because we weren't as good as everybody else in the competition. We weren't good enough, but rather than flog ourselves about it, we got positive about it. And, that taught me a whole lot about how to keep people going and how to, look for wins within the losses. We were making progress all the time. We were making progress. That's how I kept my job. The fact that we were getting better was evident for people to see. That's what ended up attracting Gary Hetherington to come and knock on my door at one point. When I thought I was going to have to pack my bags and go back to Australia, and he found out that I wasn't staying at Huddersfield Giants and offered me a contract at Leeds Rhinos. It was purely because of the fact that we were getting better, and that's
No,
what.
not just that, Tony. Not just that. Rugby league's a small place, so what was going on at Huddersfield would have been, on the waves. It'd have been on the wind in terms of your coaching style and everything. As you were talking there, Michael Jordan come to mind. He always said, always turn a negative into a positive. So that's a great example of what you did there at Huddersfield, and also as well as individuals. In times of crisis, I do a bit of work in the mental health arena.
Yes.
Always look in first. Never look out. Always look in. If you can be the best version of yourself, that will encourage others to be exactly the same, and then consequently you get better results and better friendship groups and better outcomes in your life. And I think what you've just said, those two things that I do in my day-to-day life, resonated in what you just said about your time at Huddersfield. Though it's really important about how you approach certain things, and as individuals, we need to go into. Let's go to Leeds, because of course
Can I just say that I try to make adversity temporary.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. Adversity happens in our lives. I just try to make it temporary. That it's, yes, okay, that's happened. Now, what can I learn from it? And now, what approach can I take? Which one am I going to take? The wallow and feel sorry for myself? Or do we crack on and take the learnings from it and hopefully prevent it from happening again, if that's possible?
Yeah, spot on. So Gary Hetherington, of course, takes you to the Leeds Rhinos. You take over from Darryl Powell. Great squad. You inherited a great squad. You were there at I say the start of the dynasty, really. I mean, Darryl probably in fact, took over from Darryl. It's in and around that time the dynasty started to take shape. And of course, your starting season is a grand final win against Bradford. Couldn't have gone any better, could it?
No. And a lot of that groundwork had been done by Darryl, by Gary, by other people within the club.
Yeah.
There was only two new faces in that club that at the start of that year. There ended up being three. It was myself, Marcus Bai was our other recruit, and halfway through that season, we got another pretty good player, Ali Lawatiti. But the makings of that squad were already done. They were already there. And they were a very, very talented team, a lot of depth, a lot of competition for places, and they probably just weren't quite gelling and weren't quite cracking it. And I remember watching them and thinking, these guys could be really, really good. So when I got the opportunity to coach them, obviously that was a great opportunity.
Absolutely. And let's touch on some of these players. I mean, you say it was already there. Well, let's start with Rob, because I think, as somebody who would know Rob really well, coached him for many, many years, you'll have known the pleasure of Rob, but also the pain of Rob, because when you're a Warrington coach, there's nothing worse than facing Rob Burrow. I mean, despite all of their star players, and of course Rob was one of them, he was the player that you could be, in control of a game, and then all of a sudden he ducks a tackle, and before you know it, in the blink of an eye, you're losing that match and losing it bad. When you walked into Leeds, how much did you know of Rob? What was your initial impressions? Because I mean, Barry McDermott says when they saw this kid coming through, they almost went, "You're having a laugh, never in a million years." And then they saw him play. What as coach, what was your initial impressions of Rob the player and Rob the person?
Well, can I tell you, I've got a little story here about Rob, because when he retired, I'm going to fast forward. So I'd finished at Warrington, and I was in between jobs, if you like. And Rob would just retired and started coaching the under-19s at Leeds Rhinos. And he rang me up and he said, "Tony, would you meet up with me? I'd like you to do some mentoring of me in coaching." which, wow, what a great honour it was. This was a couple of years before he was diagnosed. And he smacked me in the face one day, not literally, but he did, because I went to talk to him about the importance of what we say to players, and that was the topic for the day that we met up. And he said, "Tony, can you remember the second conversation we had back in the end of 2003?" Coming into the 2004, my first season. So pre-season of 2004 was just before Christmas. I went, "Rob, I'm getting old now. My memory's gone, and I've coached a lot of you blokes over the years. So no, I can't remember that second conversation that we ever had." And he went, "You said that." The essence of what he said and what I said to him, he remembered word for word. But pretty much what it was, "Listen, Rob, I don't care how big or small you are. If you do the job properly and well enough, I'll pick you. If you don't, I won't." That was enough for him. That was enough. He hadn't heard much of that throughout his life. He'd always been told he was too small and he wasn't going to make it. And it inspired him. He told me this, he said, as soon as you'd said that to me, I knew I was going to be all right, So yeah, it was and when I said he smacked me in the face, I was going there to talk to him about how important it is for what he says to his players. He told me something that, that was at that point, 12, 13 years later, and he could remember the exact. It taught me a whole lot about the importance of what we say to people can have an impression on people and live with them for the rest of their lives and your life. So make sure what you say to people is the right thing. Consider what we say to people as to whether we're going to inspire them or we're going to deflate them. Because equally, I could have said the wrong thing that day and made him feel like he had no hope. He was grateful that I gave him hope, and he was prepared to take that chance because I gave him hope. Sometimes when we say things to people, it can have the opposite effect too. So it hit me in this big nose of mine, in such a positive way. But it made me think and how much we've got to consider what we say to people and how important it can be.
To have Rob in your dressing room, I mean, you said he was a character and he could break. And again, I've read many books where some of his pranks are legendary in the halls of Headingley. But to have somebody like that playing for you, it was almost a secret weapon. I mean, he came off the bench, quite a lot of times. I think, people, not only yourself, but Brian McDermott did the same. At times he was brought on as an impact sub. To have a player of that quality, I mean, we saw what he did in the grand final against Saints. With a tiring pack, it's just unbelievable, isn't it, to be able to introduce that?
Listen, not very often he was on the bench when I coached him. I had him in the team most of the time.
Yeah,
he wasn't your classic halfback. He wasn't the big organizer, and he did some of that, and he did it adequately. But he was dangerous. He was an exceptional support player. And had Denny Maguire not been around, Rob would have held the try-scoring record because he was on the other side of the support play, for most of the tries. That Denny was unbelievably good support player. But Rob was always there and thereabouts and helping create some of those as well. He was very dangerous. I say this, pound for pound, he's the toughest player I've ever seen. Pound for pound, he was tough. And he was tough and dangerous because what people also don't realise, and they do nowadays, but they got little guys get targeted in rugby league. They still do, and particularly when they're very good and when they're dangerous themselves. you run more traffic at the little guys. You hope to take some of the legs out of them in terms of, their speed, and you hope to tire them out so they don't hurt you. So he copped a whole lot. He really did. And, he stood up to it, and he was a brave young man. I'm going to tell you another little bit about my time with Rob as well, because this just shows you how tough he is. And I mean, in a good way, mentally tough. Um, when he became a coach, he probably wasn't doing the hours that some coaches are encouraged to do when you start out in your journey. You're encouraged to be there before the sun comes up and after the sun goes down. Long days, put in the hard work, and maybe one day you'll get there. And Rob probably wasn't going that far when he started out in his coaching journey. And I was talking to him about it because I knew that he wasn't doing some of that. And I said to him, mate, if you're going to be a coach and a long-term coach, you're going to have to, maybe do some more hours. And he went, Tony, he just said straight to me, and this is the toughness about him. He said, I'm not going to sacrifice that time with my family. So if it means I'm not going to be a coach, I'm okay with that. It was.
Yeah. He knew his own mind. He knew his own mind.
He did, and he stuck with that throughout his illness too.
Yeah, and good on him. Yeah, good on him. I mean, again, I actually probably go the way of Rob. I mean, for me, you're doing a lot of work now in business. I know that you're doing a lot of speaking, but I do the same. And I always say to people, don't tell me that Johnny's the first one to turn the lights off and the last one to turn them off. Tell me what he's doing when he's there.
Yeah,
because that's what's important. Anybody can turn the light off and turn the light off. What's the quality of what they do when they're there? And that is what I always say to people. And Rob there embodies it. Does he need to do the amount of hours to be a great coach? I don't know. And these are for other people to comment on. But I think it's a lesson, especially in business, that what we do is the most important, not how long we're there. Which is interesting. Yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. I mean, look, you started with a grand final win, you ended with a grand final win. Throw in there as well a World Club Championship. Your time at Leeds was successful, Tony. I mean, you said when I said describe yourself in 3 words, you said humble, and I know that you've always come across as somebody who feels almost as we all do. We always feel uncomfortable talking about the great things we've done in life. That's a trait in human beings. But for your second coaching job, to have provided you with that level of success, you must look on that now with immense pride. It was a good stint at Leeds, wasn't it?
Yeah, grateful to be working with so many terrific people and great leaders, and it was good timing for them and me together. It was the right sort of time for each other. They probably needed a little bit of me, and I was able to provide that little bit that they were lacking in some areas, and and some of that self-belief and some of the discipline to get to that. So yeah, it was a good marriage. It was good. I look back on it with very proud of that, and thoroughly enjoyed it. But I'll say, Kevin Sinfield, whenever I run into Kevin Sinfield or when we have a chat, we don't talk about the victories. We talk about the relationships that we made with each other, and and that's what it's about. It's that connection that we had and that you form with one another, and that working through some of the tougher times. We probably talk about them more than any of the other. No conversation do we ever get together and go, oh, remember when we won that trophy? It just doesn't happen. It's more about the people inside and the conversations that we had, or the memories of an occasion where we really came together and opened up to one another. They're the things that we still talk about. So the byproduct is sometimes winning, and sometimes if you're good enough, it's winning a trophy. But all those bonds, there's many years that I haven't won trophies and had success, and made terrific relationships with people, and they've improved me, and I've hopefully improved some of them. So they're just as rewarding, David, some of those journeys as well.
it's how you measure success. It's not always
Absolutely.
trophies. There's and again, this is the thing about KPIs. Again, in the work that we do outside of rugby league,
Yeah.
I always say, don't look at a KPI spreadsheet. That'll
Yeah.
just tell you what the current state of play is.
It's
Your job
useful
as a
information.
coach, your job as a manager, it always starts with the individual. Unless you help that individual to become better,
Yeah.
guide them, support them, encourage
Yeah.
them, those KPIs will continue to be bad or good. You've always got to look at it on an individual basis. And I think, having watched you at Warrington, because of course I saw you bumped into you quite a few times at dinners and this, that, the other. I could see, we'll get to Warrington in a bit, but I could see that you were
Yeah.
clearly that type of man manager where you were encouraging people to be better. And I think that is why Warrington all of a sudden started winning trophies, because the equilibrium, it just changed from being dare I say it, a bit too jovial, not set up for winning trophies, to hang on a minute, let's be professional. And I'll just touch on one of the things that I mean there, because I bet you've done this at every club. It didn't go unnoticed to me that at Warrington went away from being the team that went out in town on a Sunday night, win or lose, get bevied up and go to bed at 2, because that's what, through the Huddersfield years, we saw, to all of a sudden, they were coming to events suited, booted, drinking orange juice. Now whether they were having a pint at home, good luck to them, that's behind their own door.
Yeah.
But when they were in the public eye,
Yeah.
it shifted. It was business. It was, we are here to show people that we are professional, that we deserve our share. And that, I saw that at Warrington, and I think that's probably something that you've done at every club, is that you've just changed that image of what it is to be a rugby league player under you.
I helped them change. They were ready for change. People don't change unless they want to. You can't make people change, but they were ready for some of that as well. And you're right. I've got two little stories to tell you if you like. I'll keep them brief as I can. I was there for about a month, I think, and Andy Cutcliffe was the CEO, and we trained at a separate location, but he asked to see me, so I went and saw him, and he had an email. Somebody had complained about one of our players' behaviour on a Tuesday night or Wednesday night in town, and I was livid about it, because it was a training the next day. They'd been, and it was just inappropriate behaviour, the complaint, and I was livid about it. And Andy was going, Tony, calm down, calm down. And he said, you've been here a month, and this is the first email I've had. He said, I used to get 3 a week. Like, now, that may not be the case. He may not have got 3 a week, but he was just trying to put it in perspective for me. And I didn't like the fact that we had one, but they changed. They got better at some of that at most of the times. The other quick one on that was, I remember Lee Breers coming to me really early on, and I loved Breers, I loved coaching him, and he's a character, but he was really good at it like this. He came to me and he said, there's no drinking after matches. He said, because I was encouraging them to do recovery and do all the right things. And if you were going to have a drink, well, put it somewhere away from the game. And he goes, oh, I've been doing it for years. Me and Vicky, his wife, like to go down to the local pub and just have 3 pints after a match. That's just what I do. And I went, well, Lee, there's a couple of things I'd say to you. If you continue to do it, it's going to shorten your career. If you tell anybody that I've okayed it and that's it, it's not on. And if you take any of the rest of the group and influence them to go and do the same thing, it's all off. But you can go and have your 3 points, okay, under those provisos, that you understand those things. Don't take anybody else. Don't tell anybody else. And it's going to shorten your career. I reckon it was after maybe the week 3 or 4, he came back to me and he went, I'm not going to the pub tonight. He come on board. Now, I can't tell you how long that helped him for in terms of extending his career, but he come around to us, I gave him a bit of leeway. If he wanted to make his career shorter, that was his choice, but don't influence the rest of the group. But he ended up coming around to the rest of the group and to the values that we had. So I think he got another couple of years out of himself because of that. It was just an interesting process, because he was a maverick.
Still to come on Tony Smith in Conversation.
If they wanted to showcase the ladies' game, it should have been State of Origin, New South Wales versus Queensland. That would have been an entertaining game to put on, but also showcase the ladies' game because of the evenness of those two. Would love to have been involved in the first grand final win for Warrington in Super League. That would have been great to be part of. We gave it a shake a couple of times, but that Wigan game was the big one, and I was quite okay to finish. I would have loved to have seen the project through and have some more resources. I'm not excuse making here. It was what it was, and we were poor at long periods of time there.